Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode number 1 of the Hyperspace Comlink podcast. This episode focuses on the newest era of the Star Wars universe, the High Republic. Join Andy, Kristen, and Amin as they dive headfirst into Light of the Jedi, A Test of Courage, the High Republic comics, Into the Dark, and more. Your spoiler warnings begin now.
Salacious Crumb special, everyone. I'm Andy, or Bonkers on Discord, whichever you prefer, and I'm here with my fellow hosts and friends, so I'll let them introduce themselves now.
Hey guys, it's Kristen, or Black Pulsar 13.
Hey guys, I'm Amin.
All right, let's dive right in. I thought, guys, we could start out by just talking about kind of what we felt and our thoughts on the High Republic era before we had read anything, just right when we heard it announced. So, Amin, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I think when I first heard about High Republic, my initial thought was Old Republic, and I have no idea why I thought. I mean, I've played Old Republic so more times than I can possibly count, and just I saw High Republic, and I saw before Phantom, and it's like, oh my god, it's a new game or something. I don't know. I went insane, and then I realized it was a book, but yeah, I never really got invested into it until later because I don't read that much in general. But after reading that, I just went insane. I started opening the Bane trilogy, and just
I think the thing that was more than anything, I was excited about getting more lore and learning more about stuff that they now consider canon. But I actually had more fears than anything going into it because of the way the High Republic was kind of presented. And I've talked about it before, but my biggest fear was Yoda being a main central character in a considerable portion of it. After reading Light of the Jedi, I was really glad that he wasn't. And then also that idea of I was kind of worried about them presenting the Jedi as perfect because that I think in the prequels is kind of a standard they hold themselves to that definitely helps with the downfall. So I was interested to see how they kind of handled. They're kind of tough. That is a tough concept to handle. So I was interested to see what was going to happen. And then, as always, more books is fantastic.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. When I first heard it announced, I was like, oh, and this speaks bad as on me as a reader, but my first thought was, okay, this is gonna be like a good starting point because I had read a few Legends books, well, more than a few of the canon books, but once I heard about the High Republic and all the announcements, I was like, wait a second, this sounds like I can start reading right from the beginning of this era, and I won't have to go through 8 different series before I can read the series I actually want to read, because that was a big problem I faced when I was reading Legends books. So the fact that it was like a brand new, fresh start almost was pretty exciting for me.
The fact that you don't have to go back and search up a bunch of things or for characters on the wiki because you're like, I have no idea who this is, and this is obviously someone important.
Yeah, getting to know all the characters right from the start when everyone else is meeting the characters. It was a definite positive in my mind going into it. So, I mean, the first book that came out was Light of the Jedi. We've all read it. You guys want to talk about that a little bit?
As I talked about last time, it's definitely my favorite Star Wars book I've read. It is extremely well written, in my opinion. I read a lot of books, and it's one of the best books I've read in a long time, just the way they develop the plot and the way it's written. But I think the most interesting part of this book for me, and I am definitely attached to Avar Chris at this point, but her seeing the Force as a song was something that immediately struck me as a musician. But then I think we're exploring a new way to connect with the Force in these books and in this series. It's not just something that exists and they use to their advantage in a positive or negative way that we see in the prequels, originals, and the sequels. But in this, it definitely feels like more of a flowing, living relationship that they have, which was really interesting to me to see them explore the Force not as just something that's there, but something that is part of them.
Right, right. Yeah, and I liked how it kind of went into how different Jedi view the Force in different ways. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I also like how they don't portray Jedi as gods. I don't know, like I noticed I mean there was a line, Master Tayami, I forgot, I think in the beginning she says like, we're not gods. Like what I noticed was like you know how they talked about how a few of the Jedi like died while they were trying to push the Tabana thingy away from the star?
Yeah.
They like a bunch of them died, and I think that shows how like the Force isn't something just easy to use or just like anyone can use it, you know what I mean? Like it takes serious determination, and like the fact that all those Jedi stayed there selfless, like I thought it was really amazing. I thought it showed like different depth to the Jedi training. Like I mean, specifically in the prequels they do teach selflessness, but I think it's more emotionless selflessness. So in a way, like I feel like they're always so just straight on one idea. They're always like they always say like, yeah, we have to protect everyone else, but they hardly ever think of themselves as maybe even flawed or something like that. Like in the prequels, Kiadi Mundi is just extremely ignorant. Like the Clone Wars, like when Yoda was having like when he was like talking to Qui-Gon, he was like saying that he was talking to Qui-Gon, like the normal reaction was like, okay, he's getting kind of old, or this is actually he's talking to Qui-Gon. Him, no, it's a separatist plot immediately, right away. Like we have to like impound Yoda or something. I don't know. It was insane. Like he's really ignorant. But then Jedi here, you feel like even though they're selfless, I mean, I'm sure Ki-Adi Mundi is selfless to an extent, but I feel like the Jedi in the High Republic, they're selfless. They do it in a way for themselves because they know that this is the right thing to do, and not just that that's the right thing to do, but they know that it's going to help them connect with the Force more because this is what the Force wants. You know what I mean? It set everything up, and that Tabana Gastro, like they can't change that besides using the Force. Like no one else can change that. Like I thought that was just really cool. Like the connection, like the difference between prequel era and then the High Republic era, it just shows how there's like sort of a rift between their two teachings and like how it might have adapted in a way to like the state of the galaxy, of course, since they're in war in the prequels.
Right.
It's going to be interesting to me to see how and if they try to connect Yoda's story. I hate coming back to him. How they try and connect Yoda's story through this and see if they end up covering this downfall we have in Jedi teaching and something that completely changes. But like you said, I mean, that just the selflessness they have and how you can immediately see that and feel that through the characters, it made it hurt, that scene, everything, all the stuff that happened in that original part of the disaster in Hetzel. It made it all hurt so much more, even though we barely knew them, because the way it was presented was just so powerful. It was like the first chapter. You get so attached and then they just rip it away from you. Oh my gosh. It was a lot to handle emotionally, that first part of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, just so much death and destruction, which for me is really unusual for the good, first third of a book to just be death and people dying and planets and moons, under attack by this great disaster and the emergencies, and like how can they possibly solve this? It was very stressful for that first third or so of the book for sure. And I also liked, like, I think you both hit on it, how like the High Republic doesn't portray the Jedi as infallible or godlike. Like it still shows that they are, you know, they are not gods. They are human, some of them. And also, the Great Disaster proves that hyperspace is not perfect because I'm trying to think, and I can't think of any other time in a Star Wars book or TV show or movie where like hyperspace is sick. Like something is clearly not right in hyperspace. And
And
before
besides,
now,
when Maul comes into the hyperspace, the reactor room and just destroys everything. That's that's a
right?
different disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just this theme of like what could be perceived as perfect clearly isn't. Like it can clearly have problems.
It's interesting just exploring the ability to take advantage of that in the way, how do you say it? The Nile?
Nile.
How the way they took advantage of that, I thought was really, really interesting because I think for a lot of us, hyperspace, unless it's brought up in certain specific areas, it's kind of just something we toss aside and it's just normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's like hopping on the highway for us.
With the whole Jedi being not perfect thing, it makes me think of the end of the book with the stuff with Avar and Elzar, and how there's just that connection they have, and how they're like, it's there, and they know it's there, and they know they've done stuff in the past, but it's not like freaking them out all the time. You know what I mean? Like Anakin was constantly having this internal struggle about how he felt about things. And they just kind of accepted that that was part of life and they couldn't really do anything about it, which is, it feels more like the Jedi we're supposed to know and the way we're taught about what Jedi are in the original trilogy. So I thought that was really interesting to explore their ability to just accept things and understand them rather than like overanalyzing and overthinking like it seems like the prequel Jedi do all the time.
I think that was the view of Obi-Wan. Clearly, everyone knows like he had little something something with Satine, or didn't, but Corky Creed. So here's the thing, like what I thought was like Obi-Wan looking over, like he obviously knew that Anakin and Padme were husband and wife. Like there's no getting around it. Like literally the way that he acts around her is just like they talk informally, so it's pretty obvious, they're not just friends, right? And it's just not even that. It's also his name. It's also Obi-Wan's connection with Satine. He clearly has feelings for her and stuff like that, and he acknowledges the fact, like he knows it 100%. He doesn't try to like get around it. Like I swear, if Ki-Adi-Mundi had feelings, I'm convinced he would just jump out the window or something. Like he would kill himself. Like like I don't know, like the way that he reacts towards the conservative type of like like the one way, only a Sith deals in absolutes. I know he's not a Sith, but like he's just always like he only sees like one vision. He's not flexible in any way. Like if he had any type of attachment, just everything would be spiraling like crazy.
Now you're making me think of that whole idea of Sith deals in only the Sith deals in absolutes is very hypocritical on the Jedi.
Yeah. I was thinking like I felt like in a way like the Jedi were becoming, like in the prequels, the Jedi are becoming something that they aren't. You know what I mean? Like the Jedi, they become like in the prequels, they like compared to the High Republic. In the High Republic, they're super selfless. They acknowledge the fact that they have feelings and that they're human, not literally, but you know what I mean. And then, but in the prequels, like they sort of drift away, and like they are Jedi by classification. Like on paper, yeah, they're Jedi, but they're something else. Like they're not the way a Jedi should be. Compared to like the High Republic. I think that's like the ideal Jedi in the High Republic.
The whole book is really just like a trip, honestly, from start to finish. I wasn't expecting most, if any of it, and just how much I think it's made all of us reevaluate how we view all other Star Wars content is really, really interesting. Getting just, if even in just the first few weeks when we had couple books and a comic, we were all like freaking out and like, how does this change everything we already know? And this kind of ties into that short story a little bit, but something I think that is interesting about the book, and something I've thought about a lot, because there's like I'll see Twitter threads all the time about people positing ideas about random characters who are force sensitive. So like Han is a really great example, but I think I'm hoping that this era kind of delves a little bit more into the Force as less of just a Jedi Sith thing and more of a, because that seemed to be what it was doing with the idea of Avar seeing it as a song and Elzar seeing it as, I think ocean is from what I remember, like waves. I don't know, just I hope we're exploring more on the idea of other people being Force sensitive and like taking advantage of that even if they don't know they are. Which I would argue that Marchion Ro is potentially Force sensitive and that he's one of the most evil characters that we've ever been introduced to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it's also for sensitivity. There's also someone like Chirat Imui. Like he was so in tune with the Force that like he could walk on his own. Like I know he was blind and stuff like that, but like I'm not trying to be mean in any way, but like the way that he was in tune with the Force, he trusted it to a point where he walked in front of an entire company of stormtroopers and didn't even care, and just he took them all down. And like it's just, he's blind. You know what I mean? Like it's just on paper he would have been dead right there, but the way that he was in tune with the Force was telling him what to do in a way. You know what I mean? And I think that's how some of the characters might be in the High Republic era, just like you said, Kristen, with Mark Anro and everything.
I really think Pika and Joss are a good example of that too. we don't get much of them in that book, but then in the short story later we do, and I really like those characters a lot. So the Battle of Kerr towards the end of the book was probably one of my favorite parts, um, outside of just exploring the characters, like, personalities in general. Jorah Malley hurt, like, weirdly getting that death, and just the whole thing with the hyperspace skipping and the way the Nile fighted and how different it was compared to, like, what we see in the Clone Wars sometimes. It's not necessarily that they don't fight dirty, it's just that it's much more classic. It's much more classic Star Wars than what we're used to, so it makes me interested in seeing how they could potentially adapt this into some sort of live action or animated thing, but just reading that was, like, shocking in some ways.
Yeah, if you've ever been in prequel memes, they're always talking about how Anakin is doing war crimes. I mean, there's nothing that compares to quote unquote war crimes than what we saw with the Nile and High Republic. The hyperspace skipping, just like slamming their ships into the into the Republic ships, and then also releasing, like, I know there was like a stolen ship, and then they released that ooze into space and like destroyed all these ships. That was insane. It blew my mind. Like, it's unlike anything we've ever seen in any Star Wars, or at least for me. Like, I've never seen, like, the ideas that the author had. He just probably had to sit down and just think of the most random things that the ships could do, like that the Nile could do. You know.
I just realized that Nile definitely comes from nihilism. So that's interesting how they just that's a
Not
really
nihilist, like from Old Republic, nihilist, annihilate.
it's really interesting. But then the whole road just sacrificing all of those Nile just to get his point across and say I am above all of you was really
Mhm.
interesting to me. He just didn't care at that point.
And I think another thing was Skier. You know, I really liked Skier's character, especially. I mean, they described Jorah Malley in a really interesting way, and how like her lightsabers were like white and everything, and like I thought we would get more on her. You know, like about the Sith crystal that she cured and all that, and then she just randomly died. And I don't really blame Skier, because clearly they had like a connection, like a really good friends, and she just dies right there. And I'm sure that, like, you know, with the comics, we're gonna get something where he's just seeking revenge. I mean, that's why. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know in Dooku in the book it said that what's her name, Keeve Trennis left the Order. I feel like this might tie into that. Like, she might leave the Order because of maybe what Skier might do or something. We don't know for sure, obviously, but it might actually tie into it. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Skier is very obviously affected by by the Battle of Kerr. Both you can kind of tell both in the book, but really, once you get to the High Republic issue 1 and 2, like, he is obviously not okay. Something is wrong, um, and I think you're right. I think that will eventually lead to, it affecting his relationship with Keeve, and maybe it somehow leads to her leaving the Order eventually.
I think it's interesting just in those first two issues how much you can see how the rage he's starting to exhibit is already affecting how she views them, how she views him. Like, it's even though it's subtle and in little ways, and a lot of it is just in the art style. It seemed to me just in the small inflections in the body language they were making. It was really interesting. And on top of the fact that Keeve seems really relatable as a young person, so watching her deal with that is really interesting, and how is she going to deal with her mentor going down a path she can't follow, but potentially. So, and just the whole thing we talked about earlier with Jedi not being perfect, that rage is almost satisfying to see in a way.
Yeah, like, because we just haven't seen it in a Jedi before outside of Anakin slaughtering, you know, Tusken Raiders. But I can't wait for issue number 3 now. Like, I just want to see what happens to Skier, and like how he eventually deal with this rage and like move on from his grief and mourning, or does he just stay a scaly ball of anger and destroy everything he can?
I kind of want them to, like, keep him angry in a way because I think there's so many potentials for where they could take a story like that. So I hope they don't, like, tie it off with a nice bow somewhere. I feel like that would be kind of sad. But at the same time, we do have to deal with the fact that we can't just have him pop up as a villain and not deal with the implications that would have on all of the canon content we already have.
Yeah, I really want to see a Jedi mess up in the High Republic, and I don't know, like I don't want them to be too perfect. Like I don't want it to be obvious. Obviously, it's not going to be Anakin's like scale where he just goes and attacks the temple and kills kids. But I feel like just in general, like if we see a Jedi mess up somehow, like turn to the, I mean, Emery like sort of teased it in a way. Like he almost turned to the dark side. He was going to say he was going to kill Vernestra and just keep on moving. Like that's dark side, but he was like saved or like redeemed in a way. I feel like if we just had like one Jedi just mess up, just completely trip hard, and just it would be really really cool to see that the Jedi really aren't perfect. Like things like that do happen to certain Jedi, and I think that actually might happen to Kiev. Like, will she be like Ahsoka? Will she leave in a way where it's like voluntary, or will she leave because of what she sees her master doing, or maybe she turns to the dark side? Who knows? Like, I really want to see genuinely. Like, I cannot wait for the next issues to come. Genuinely, like I can't wait.
Jumping back to my favorite character of all time on that topic though of Jedi like tripping up and making mistakes. They seem to be setting up Avar in such a way that there's that potential. So it'd be really interesting to watch her grow and be so humble in so many ways and get all of this power and then make some massive mistake and how they deal with something like that. Like that'd be really interesting because I think the Jedi in the prequels were corrupt in a lot of ways. So I think if somebody up in those upper echelons had made a mistake, they probably wouldn't deal with it than the same way that the bureaucracy of the Jedi in the High Republic era would. And just overall with the comics, the beauty of it was just really nice. Just how absolutely gorgeous the issues were and just the different kind of feel this gave. It was really, really nice.
I really like the when Kiev was doing her trials. I think the colors were really vivid and really nice there. With all the plants and the like the light, like the life around it. It was really really cool.
Yeah, I mean, so far, both in the High Republic and the High Republic Adventures, the art is just insanely good. Like the colors and everything, it adds to the story, really, I think. And speaking of which, like when I picked up High Republic Adventures, the first thing the guy at my comic book store said was, "Oh, the art in this one is amazing." I was like, "Really amazing?" And then like I started reading it, I was like, "Oh no, like it's different, but it is so cool." Like it's different from anything I think I've seen in a Star Wars comic that I've read. I mean, the kind of merging of speech bubbles because two characters are basically thinking the same thing. I thought that was cool.
That
Uh,
blew my mind.
yeah, it. And then again, just the art overall is incredible.
It added to the atmosphere a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, uh, High Republic Adventures brings up the point we touched on earlier about how there are force sensitive people out there who aren't Jedi, and like we see in this issue, sometimes they're force sensitive, but the culture they live in tells them, no, you aren't supposed to use that. You can't use that. And I mean, we find out at the spoilers, we find out at the end of issue one, oh, well, I'm going to use it anyway. And I'm sure we'll see the effects and the fallout from that. But it is an interesting look at a different culture in Star Wars we haven't seen before. And, you know, other cultures' view of the Force and Force sensitivity.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Kit Fisto. He always teaches what's his name, Nadar Veb. He always teaches him restraint. Like when he uses the Force to like you clear the mist before they enter layer of Grievous. Kit Fisto teaches him like restraint, and I feel like it was really cool. I mean, I don't know if it was purposely like a nod to it, but I really saw it. I don't know. I have a connection with Clone Wars, so like that's naturally what I connected it with. I thought it was really cool to see like restraint, and I feel like I mean to see other characters not trusting the Force in a way. Like they always say like, hey, I remember in Clone Wars. Okay, I'm really sorry. I'm going insane about Clone Wars, but in the slave arc, Obi-Wan, when he's enslaved, they tell him like, if you're not following our orders, we're gonna whip you, right? We're not gonna whip you, we're gonna whip the other people. And when they whip the other people, like the other Togruitans, the Obi-Wan tries to help, and he's like, Jedi ruin everything. And I feel like that might actually be the view of some of these characters from that High Republic adventure. Like, Jedi might actually ruin everything because it depends on what, if it depends on like maybe their experience with Jedi, or they just believe in restraint, same as Kit Fisto.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love any chance to see how people who aren't Jedi in the Star Wars universe view the Force and view the Jedi. There's a great example of it in Legends of Luke Skywalker. If you've read that book, I won't go into it because that would take up a significant amount of time if I start talking about that. But I always love seeing, how the Jedi are viewed by non-Jedi.
I wonder if that whole people thinking Jedi ruin everything will get worse after all of the Nile stuff gets more wrapped up, and if people, because as we know, you can't have access to all the information, especially in a universe like this. So I'm interested to see how much the Jedi start to get blamed for things because they took the blame for so many things and all of the content we've seen before. So I'm interested to see if, especially in the Outer Rim, like we already know that they're getting so much blame for everything that's going on and all the issues happening out there. So I'm interested to see if that potentially starts to wrap into that downfall idea and where we're going next.
Yeah, in Old Republic in general, a lot of characters touch on the fact that the Jedi and the Sith are, yeah, I'm quoting the prequels at this point, but Jedi and the Sith are the same in many ways. And in the Bane trilogy, which is close-ish to the Knights of the Old Republic, but he talks about Bane himself, or Dessel, his name is. He actually talks about 100% that how like the Jedi, the Republic, and the Sith, like they're both just big superpowers, and they don't matter. They don't care about the like the little people, like the people, those colonists that were mining and all those, like the miners. They were having like horrible not like miners like young, like miners like underground mining, but they were having like horrible quality of lives because like they're going out every day, they're risking their lives, and they're just having horrible lives, like in general. And I think that touches on how people might think that the Jedi and the Republic are the same, because no matter who's in control, there's always going to be people who are hurt. And they also did that in Mandalorian too. How people are always hurt, like Jedi, Republic, Sith, it doesn't matter. Whoever's in charge, there's always going to be people who are just down below, and they're always going to be like that. I think we might actually see that, because I have a feeling that we might see Jedi versus Nile, but then people get in the crossfire and they might die because of it, and maybe that the Jedi will be blamed for that, because that happens a lot. Because in the Clone Wars, they're always blamed for the war, in a way, because they think that the Jedi are supposed to stop it, and in a way, that is their job. So I don't know. I hope we see something like that.
So, a test of courage. One of the things I really liked about this book was, and we mentioned it before, Emery almost falling to the dark side just because he's so angry and grieving, his master's death, and he doesn't know really how to work through it in a way that doesn't lead to the dark side. Um, and Cheerie's death also didn't help. Like, he makes one new friend on this planet they're stranded on, and then, oh nope, sorry, he's gone too. So I think his interaction with Vernestra at the end was really cool, and I'm interested to see more from them. And then Vernestra was really interesting also, like her using a light whip, which we find out is traditionally a dark side weapon, but she's clearly like a pretty by the book Jedi Knight at 16, which just leads credence to, oh, maybe she's not as in danger of falling to the dark side as you might be led to believe by her using the light whip.
Do you think it's I always think it's interesting when they bring up kind of, I guess, dichotomies like that, where we have something that is supposed to be one way using something that's supposed to be another way. So that's interesting to think about, just changing something that's supposed to be dark side into just retransforming it into something that is of the light, like that idea of cleansing kyber crystals. It kind of feels like that.
Yeah, another thing, this reminded me of Kyle Katarn. I didn't actually play, I only played one of the games, but he says that the force abilities, they don't dictate what alignment you have or like what your intention of using the force is. He says that it's how you use those abilities. You know what I mean? It's like he uses force lightning, like in that canon era thing, he actually uses force lightning, but he's, you know, a Jedi and he fights for the balance of the galaxy essentially. But you know, it's just really interesting to see the fact that, I mean, even actually Starkiller, I mean, he's part of the rebellion, right? In Force Unleashed, and he uses Force Lightning, you know? So it just shows how, you know, how, I think, you know, like, I think that just how you use the Force powers isn't like, you know, it doesn't dictate what alignment you make. And I think it's a really cool idea that they're doing it here. And I really hope they do it because it'll show even more how the prequels, you know, they become too closed-minded. You know, they don't try to embrace other ideas. And by other ideas, I'm not saying we straight up go to the dark side. I'm saying that not all dark side abilities or what's considered dark side are bad. You know what I mean? There are dark side abilities that people can use but still stay on the light side completely. And of course, light side and dark side is pretty one-minded. Obviously, I'm just saying mostly alignment and intention, what's right and wrong, just morals.
Right, right. So it's more of a case of you defining what a tool is used for and not the tool defining who you are, unless that tool is a droid that you've programmed to become more self-aware and less actual protocol droid.
Like HK-47, that was like the best droid ever. Oh my god, like the most homicidal. I loved it.
I think that idea of the force doesn't decide, like just you using dark side powers even though you're on the light side, and how it's not necessarily it's they're determined dark side because of who's used them in the past. I feel like that helps with that idea of the light side being the force being balanced, because I think so many of us are that whole, well, you have to have equal light, equal dark, when I think George Lucas himself has been like, no, a prominence in the light is a balance. So I think if we can finally move into that idea of it's not what you use, it's how you use it, will actually let people accept the idea that the light side is the balanced side of the force.
Yeah, I think Luke was supposed to be that middle ground. I would say, I'm not going to say obviously that the Sith are 100% right and we should we should nominate the Sith to rule the galaxy because they're pretty chaotic. I mean, look at Darth Nihilus. He would have destroyed the galaxy instead of ruled it. So, yeah, I mean, I would say in general, the light side and the dark side, I think in terms of balance, I think Luke was supposed to be that middle ground because the Sith were wrong at that time. You know, the Empire and everything, they were oppressing worlds and stuff like that, keeping, you know, sort of a hierarchy. There was a lot of racism. They weren't letting, you know, like other aliens, like, you know, live certain lives or even serve in the military, you know. Um, Not just that, I think the Jedi were also really, like, they were wrong. You know, they were trying to get control of the Senate. And not just that, they were falling down a dark path. Yoda said it himself, you know. And even after the war, they probably wouldn't have been the same because the certain Jedi might have undergone trauma and then their teachings would change. They would adapt in a bad way, in a way. So I thought, you know, Luke would have been that middle ground where they're not 100% Sith lords and they're all just trying to take over the galaxy. But also, they're not 100%, you know, we're all on the side of the Republic and we'll do whatever we have to do to win, even if it means we're breaking our customs as Jedi, you know? Like, I feel like that's what Luke was supposed to be, like just that middle ground where, you know, the Force, it's like we've been saying, like it's how you use it. It's not what you're using, essentially.
That's a lot to think about. I feel like we just got really deep about the moral of the force and how it connects the whole galaxy.
Yeah, and all from a junior reader. um, but and I mean, it's not the Force, but I do think Avon and J6 kind of also feed into that theme of here's this nanny slash bodyguard droid who is designed for a very specific purpose. But Avon says, you know what? I want to use it for a different purpose. So I'm just going to tinker with the programming and see what happens. And, you know, towards the end of the book, like she starts realizing, oh, maybe I've gone a little bit too far because J6 is getting a little bit too sassy for my comfort.
J6 was like L337 from Solo. She like sassy and like that line that where she tells Han to get out of the seat. I mean, I don't swear, so I'm not gonna say it, but oh, that was really, really funny.
It is that idea of young adult novel and getting all of this from that, a junior novel, I guess, getting all of this from that is really interesting. I think Star Wars has done a really good job at making kids and young people really think about things and morals in from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, and I think A Test of Courage does a really good job of like showing the kids who are gonna read it, like, hey, it's okay to grieve and feel sad, um, but don't let it destroy your life, like Emery almost did, um, because everyone on that ship with those kids, like all those kids have suffered loss of some sort. Maybe they didn't know the people who died when the bombs went off too well, but they're all struggling. Like they all lost someone that they knew. And I think it was a really good view at how different people mourn differently, if that makes any sense.
We all say Clone Wars isn't a kids show, and it's hard to argue that even these novels that are written towards young people are for kids.
Yeah.
Because there's just, if you read into it a little bit too much, there's so many sometimes really like mourning deaths that are important to you, sometimes just really dark themes that can be hard even for adults to grapple with in some ways. So just putting all that into a kid's book and then having them read it, and then it's interesting because like I'll go back to books I've read as a kid, like The Giver is a great example. I reread that a few years ago after having it been so long, and I was like, wow, I'm seeing all of these things that I never saw before. So I can't imagine going back to that with a Star Wars book and something that you read as a kid, and then that was supposed to be for kids, and then coming back to it and being like, wow, this was really heavy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I mean, not really there's a bit of philosophical stuff with the light side and dark side and like how to use it and stuff like that, and in Test of Courage, especially when Vernestra like conflicted, like like she's conflicted, like she's wondering like whether this is going to turn her to the dark side, like the whole light whip thing, and then Imri's all jealous about how she's like a lot more powerful, and I think that's just really cool how they really touch on that, and also yeah, like you said, the whole like setting the theme where when Master Douglas died and his dad died, the other kid, forgot his name, they were both like
Honesty.
really, really depressed. Sorry?
Honesty.
Yeah, the weird name. Yeah, Honesty something. Weft, that's what it was. And then yeah, like they were both like really depressed. I mean that's a bit much for a kids show. Like I was shattered over Ahsoka leaving, but I mean she came back in season 7, but like this is like a bit much, you know?
Yeah, like how much can these kids go through and still come out okay?
It makes you realize how much Jedi just in general go through, and all of the characters in the Star Wars universe are just in so much pain all the time.
Yeah. How is everyone not on the dark side?
And going to Into the Dark, it kind of makes me, I haven't read much of it, but it kind of makes me nervous with the title. Like, what emotional trauma are we going to endure in this book?
Yeah, I'm only halfway, so I won't go into spoilers, but yeah, I'm kind of worried about what's gonna happen because there's clearly dark side things at play, whether or not it's the Sith or something associated with the Nile or just the dark side in general. Like, there's definitely darkness there.
It's also great to just, I'm excited to read more Claudia Gray. She's fantastic. And even just reading I think I'm just through the first couple chapters, just her writing style is great. So I always have a great appreciation for if the author can write well, then I will definitely want to read more of the book and more of what they write.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not far into the dark. I'm only like 4 or 5 chapters in, but I swear to God, if Orla Jurini dies, it's a cool character. I think it's a really, really cool character. And the species, like Umbaran, I think we've only seen that like once, like on Umbara, the Umbara from Clone Wars, at least for me. I mean, like the lightsaber, oh my God. We've only seen that with Pong Krell, who like everyone hates, obviously, but I mean, like, it's really cool to see it with a respected Jedi, you know? No one respects Pong Krell.
Yeah, well, and her lightsaber goes back to our point of like how you use something determines the thing. Like not the thing determining who you are. You determine it and its use. So Ponkrell used it for evil. Orla's using it to be awesome.
I'm definitely excited to see what else they give us next. I I feel like we can only go up from here. Which I knock on wood, I hope I don't ruin it for us, but I don't know. I hope they don't mess this up because they had this past month and a half has been a really strong start.
Yes, yeah, I can't think of a better start for like I guess you could call it a media campaign. I don't know. Like I don't know that I've even witnessed anything where it was books and comics all like planned so far out ahead, all coming out at the same time. But it makes me so excited to see what else is coming for us next.
I'm excited to see the comic about not comic, the one coming in February 21st. Manga. I don't know how to pronounce that, but the two lightsabers, like just like sort of similar to Ahsoka. I think we've hardly ever see that, and I think it's really cool to see that. Like finally, like light whip was one thing, and then like the lightsaber hinge, and then also the two lightsabers, one each in separate hand. I think that like I'm really excited to see that because I mean, I can only think of a few characters: Ahsoka, Asajj Ventress, Revan, but I think that's only in drawings. I don't even think he uses them together or like together. Yeah. I'm 100% missing a few, but that's like those are the ones that come to mind.
I'm definitely, like we talked about earlier, I'm excited for more comics because this is the first time I feel like I've been just like getting to start the comics fresh like this. I've never really been able to get into them because I always feel like I'm missing something. Like
Oh,
I
listen
don't.
to me. You start those Vader comics, you will not want to put them down. Trust me.
I
Like those.
know, that's the other problem. So it's nice to be at the beginning of something, and I think that's kind of monumental for a lot of younger Star Wars fans. People like my parents grew up going to the originals, and they saw them all in the theaters, so I think it's monumental for a lot of us to start this whole new era, and we get to start it all as a big group together all over the internet, and just have something fresh to start off with. It feels like I'm hoping that we can make the High Republic era kind of our own in a sense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And like, there's going to be a generation of Star Wars fans who, oh, what was your first Star Wars book? Oh, Light of the Jedi. Or what was your first Star Wars comic? Oh, The High Republic, #1. Like, like you said, it's like a fresh start for I guess, the new generation of Star Wars fans.
It's really exciting.
I always to tell my grandkids about Wet Bub.
Moment of silence.
No, Wet Bug does not deserve a moment of silence. I'm sorry.
Oh my
I'm
god. This is
sorry.
suppression. What is this? Oh my god.
Um,
Wet bub slander.
Shutting down the podcast right now. This is honestly unacceptable. I don't see any reason to keep on going. Also, the FBI is it's an investigation of Andy right now. We're just figuring things out.
uh, I am. I gotta say, I'm most excited for the Rising Storm, just because I want to know what happens to Loden Greatstorm. Like
Oh yeah.
it's just so sad where he is right now.
Also, Stellan Gios and that lightsaber.
Oh
I
yes.
need Stellan Gios right now. Like that's gonna be. I feel he's gonna be a really cool character.
Everything they put out next. I don't think they can disappoint us at this point. I hope not,
Unless
but I
they
don't
bring
think
back
they
Von
can.
Krell, but
Yeah. I I don't think I'll be disappointed no matter what because I'm fairly easy to please anyway. But if they keep up the quality that they've had so far, oh yeah, it's gonna be phenomenal.
They're scratching the Star Wars itch for all of us that we've had.
it's not even the quality. It's like the effort that they put in, like for the books and everything. Like the effort that they have to put in. Like they have real dedication. Like you could tell they've seen the movies. They've 100% seen Clone Wars. And Charles Soule, I'm 100% sure he's played Knights of the Old Republic because he mentioned the Selkath and alluded towards Kolto, like the healing thing. If he hasn't played Knights of the Old Republic, I'd be 100% surprised because that's the only instance that I could actually think about it besides maybe hearing about it in the Bane trilogy. And I don't even know if it was in there. That's just, vaguely what I remember. So I don't know. It's just really cool.
This is off topic, but I gotta say, man, your ability to remember all these names of places and characters from everything is very impressive. I'm sure listeners will agree, but yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to have you here to remind us of stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
The Clone Wars knowledge is unmatched. I appreciate it.
Yeah, like we don't even need Wikipedia. We have Amin here, so.
I'm so sorry about that. You have me here. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Well, it feels great to get to sit down and actually talk about the High Republic, and just chatting in the servers is fun, but sometimes it's nice to just throw what you're thinking at other people and just have the natural conversation come out. It's really fun. Well, I guess I can wrap it up. It was great to talk to you guys again. It was really fun to do this. I am definitely enjoying that we get to do this every once in a while, and getting to read through everybody's thoughts in the server first and then throw them all in here feels good. Sometimes I feel like I'm stealing everybody else's thoughts, but this is definitely a great experience.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to you guys again next month, I think. I don't know when we're going to do the next one, but I can't wait.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this edition of the Hyperspace Comlink podcast. Be on the lookout for our next episode, where our hosts, and maybe a guest or two, will come together to discuss the Clone Wars television series. We hope you'll join us then, but for now, thank you for listening, and remember, we are all the Republic.